background vocals and things, I think, in the studio that might have been technologically difficult to reproduce at that time. Yeah. That was always a little point with us. Chris, our first producer, Roy Thomas Baker, who had done, Bohemian Rhapsody and these grandiose records, and he was really into big vocals, and we were turned on to it. We liked the sound of it. It sounded great when you heard all those voices played back, but there's no way, 4 or 5 guys can, reproduce that on
We can't sing 72 tracks of vocals.
No, and there wasn't no such thing as samplers. We weren't into like flying stuff artificially in, so we never had tapes or anything on stage. So
I just remember when we did Good Times Roll in the studio in England, the first record, and when we heard back the vocals, I told Roy that I thought it was way, way too much. I said, well, Roy, that's like way too much. That just sounds like so many. But, it grew on me later, and it sounded so smooth. It was a nice process to do it, because Roy, was fortunate enough to have like a 40-track machine, which in the day of 24-track, he had his own special machine. So he could do layering of vocals a lot. We spent probably more time layering vocals on the first album than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Because it only took 12 days to make. And I think half the time was probably just layering the vocals.
I did all my guitar parts in a day and a half.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And we just did the basics, because we were pretty
just really ill.
Good from live. But that shocked me, those big voices.
4 guys singing one part, you double it like 4 times. So that's like the equivalent of about 16 voices, just like on the first harmony. Then you do the same thing with the second and third. So you got like a whole gang of guys singing in there.
Some of the effects that are on the first album are really long drum effects. They sound like keyboards. There's a lot of them that people have always thought were keyboards. But you could get this like 3-minute delay on all these really weird, mostly sort of outer space kind of sounds. You can hear them at the ends and beginnings of songs and stuff. So you had to program that sound, if you could find it again, into the drum machine, and then if anybody bumped the equipment or like turned a knob, you'd go to hit a sound that was supposed to last like 3 minutes and it would end in about 5 seconds. You'd have to try to like figure out where it went. Yeah, like where it went. It was just like knobs everywhere and foot switches everywhere.
Back in the good old days.
Yes. And it was steam powered.
Yeah.
Remember in Live Aid, they were all triggered involuntarily? We were playing in front of 2 billion people, and out in the hot sun, those, electronic drums started, and Ben singing, "Who's gonna drive you home?" And I hear, beedle-leedle-leedle-leedle-leedle, doom, doom, all this stuff just going off, man, going out live and satellite. Do you remember that?
But we always loved all the latest electronic stuff and tried to go out and find whatever we could use.
Yeah. We liked the technology.
For drummers, they didn't have a lot of stuff for a long time. But usually we would send out our tech guy, and he would just come back with a bunch of stuff he thought I might like and would plug all kinds of things in and see what they did.
We even got to get some things from Roland when we were in Japan that weren't out for America yet. We brought some of the first TR-808 drum machines back. I remember everybody bought one. And
did we get those in Japan?
Well, we ordered them at least. We saw them for the first time. In Japan, there was a Roland representative.
Yep, the TR-808 is now like the
workhorse
of
the future of what the next year of music technology was coming. And so we some of that stuff we got early on. Greg got the Prophet synthesizer very early on, right? And
synthesized bass.
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah, you had pedals too.
Yeah, what happened to those pedals? I forgot about those pedals. The super subsonic pedals you had.
Meachon Octavider.
Ah,
oh, yes.
Octavider.
Had to have it. We used that and all mixed up.
It's gotten miniaturized, but then you needed one box just to do slapback echo. Where now you got a little thing this big that'll do 8 simultaneous effects and be controlled by your feet. Then we had big racks of stuff. You'd have to drag along whatever made the sound in the studio, basically, to create it. There weren't a lot of little pedals that did that stuff then. It was just coming on. I've got that chorus pedal, and that was a big part of my sound in the early stuff, the Roland chorus. I was just thinking how when Captain Swing played Max's Kansas City for all the big management companies, and one of the comments that we got were that we didn't look unified. You know, one guy looked like he should be in the Grateful Dead, and one guy looked like he should be in the Velvet Underground, and one guy looked like this or that. And I think, you know, that was one of the criticisms, is that we were too musically and image-wise all over the map, right? Yeah. And I think we took some of that to heart, and I think that also had an influence on our making an attempt to try to develop some kind of unified image to put forward. I think it's always kind of a little weird to see someone else's perception of you, because you probably, you know, you see yourself so differently, and to like make a record and just like put it out there, and it goes from this personal thing to something that like anybody can comment on or take home and listen to and have an opinion on, and sometimes it's a little hard to relate to, because you just make, you know, you're just working on stuff and making music, art, whatever, and it's tough to, it sometimes feels funny to see how you're viewed by other people.
Ben, did you think of yourself as the sexy one?
Oh, hell no. Randy maybe, but not the sexy one.
The amazing Randy.
Sven Hollander, there you go. No. I've always kept my one foot on the ground. It's just a show. You act, and then you leave the stage and you're somebody else. But nobody else sees that, except these guys and the crew. And that was terrifying.
I think we liked being separated from the music business. It's kind of cool to be separated from the music business, you know, be up there. And we kind of got our own thing going up there, you know, once we got, excuse me, the studio going, and, you know, we had sort of our clubhouse in our studio, and we hung there all the time, and, you know, we just liked it. And we also thought it was probably one of the best music scenes in the country. Radio was still supportive, and, you know.
Yeah, all the musicians, you know, were happy about the scene that was going on, but it actually garnered enough attention so that there'd be articles in like Newsweek or something about it being like a hot spot, and there was a lot of people looking at Boston at that time for maybe a 3-year period, signing coming to town, signing all the groups up and stuff.
It's like what happened in Seattle a few years ago. It was almost that kind
of
thing, right? Like Boston was a hot town for a minute.
And of course it had a tradition before that of being a good place for musicians to come to anyway, you know, with folk scene and jazz scene and stuff.
Student population that would support new music and always looking for new music, and we were able to at least eke out a modest living playing in this band even before we ever got a record deal. I mean, it was only, you know, a couple $100 a month maybe, but we were able to exist playing our own songs, which was probably unheard of in a lot of places in the country. You could never, you'd have to be playing just top 40 just to exist. And so Boston was good that way.
Plus, when bands came through town, they would always find their way to that studio to visit some of them.
It was a good place. Like, we brought Iggy Pop back after his show. It was a good place to come back after like someone's show at the Paradise or something, and we'd go back and listen to tapes or hang out and have a little party or whatever. And it was a good way to host musicians that we liked, and we had a place that we could invite them to and hang out with them. And
also, it was the first, I think, the first recording studio I'd ever set foot in years before with the Modern Lovers.
We bought a studio, and then we just like gave it all away to people. And
we made it our clubhouse.
It was basically a clubhouse that we just financed.